Mansa Musa was so rich that when he walked through Cairo in 1324 giving away gold, he single-handedly crashed the Egyptian economy for 12 years. A kind of historical wealth so immense it didn't just build empires, it could literally break them. This is the story of the richest people in history. $400 billion. That's a rough and probably very conservative estimate of what Mansa Musa's net worth would be today. To put that in perspective, that's more than many of the big-name tech billionaires you can think of combined. But how on earth could one person, centuries ago, become the wealthiest person ever? I need you to really let that sink in. He didn't crash the economy through a hostile takeover or a market manipulation. He crashed it through pure, unadulterated generosity. He literally gave away so much free gold that the metal itself became devalued, triggering runaway inflation that crippled an entire region. You've probably never heard his name in a history class, have you? So let's meet the man, the legend, Mansa Musa, emperor of the Mali Empire in the 14th century. By almost any serious historical measure, he is the single richest man in history. And his story? Well, it reveals a kind of wealth we can barely even comprehend today. It's a wealth that wasn't just measured in money, but in power over the very elements of the global economy. So what was his secret? No stocks, no software, no clever financial engineering. The Mali Empire just happened to be sitting on top of the planet's largest deposits of the two most valuable commodities of the era, gold and salt. For a time, salt was literally as valuable as gold. And Musa didn't just have a share of the market, he was the market. He had absolute total control of over half the world's entire supply. The story of his pilgrimage to Mecca says it all. You see, this wasn't just a trip. It was a mobile city, a caravan of 60,000 people, soldiers, civilians, entertainers, and a personal retinue, snaking its way across the desert. And get this, he brought a train of 80 camels, with each one carrying 300 pounds of pure gold dust. And as he passed through cities like Cairo, he just gave it away, to the poor, to the merchants, to the local rulers. He flooded the market so completely, the value of gold plummeted and didn't recover for over a decade. So Mansa Musa's wealth came from controlling a commodity, but that's just one kind of extreme historical wealth. What happens when your personal fortune is the entire country? When you don't just own the mines, you own the whole nation, lock, stock, and barrel. Here, we've got two completely different models of absolute power. On one side, you have Augustus Caesar. His estimated net worth, a staggering $4.6 trillion in today's money. Why so high? Because he didn't just govern Egypt, which was Rome's richest province. He personally owned it. All of its grain production, its taxes, its ports, it was all his personal income stream. And then you have Genghis Khan. You can't even calculate his net worth. Why? Because the man didn't care about money. He didn't accumulate cash. He accumulated the world itself. At its peak, his empire covered 22% of the Earth's total land area. He didn't need a bank account when he controlled the land, the people, and the trade routes. And that is the absolute heart of it. This isn't about having a fat bank account. This is about wielding the full power of a state, as if it's your private property with absolutely no one to tell you no. So, we've seen people who owned a commodity and people who owned the land. But what about the ones who are even smarter? The ones who owned the systems themselves. These are the men who operated behind the throne, the ones financing the kings, controlling entire industries, and rewriting the rules of the game to suit them. Can you imagine having the guts to write this letter? This is from Jakob Fugger, a 16th century German banker, to Charles V, the Holy Roman Emperor, the most powerful man in Europe at the time. Fugger had personally financed Charles's election, and when the emperor was a little late on his loan payments, Fugger sent this gentle reminder. It basically says, don't forget who put you on that throne. Fugger didn't want to be the king. He owned the king. 91%. What do you think this number represents? This was the share of all oil production in the entire United States that John D. Rockefeller's company, Standard Oil, controlled at its peak. Not a majority share, not a large share, a near total and complete stranglehold on the energy that powered a nation. I mean, think about that for a second. His monopoly wasn't just big, it was something the world had never seen before. His control was so absolute that the United States government had to create entirely new legal frameworks, the antitrust laws we still have today, specifically to deal with him and his company. He had built something the entire American legal system was not prepared to handle. But this kind of ruthless systemic control is nothing new. Let's go all the way back to ancient Rome and meet Marcus Licinius Crassus, one of the wealthiest men in its history. He created Rome's first ever fire brigade. The catch? It was a private fire brigade. It worked for him. So here's how it went. A building in Rome catches fire. Crassus and his men show up. He then offers to buy the burning building from the desperate owner for pennies on the dollar. If the owner agrees, his men put out the fire. If the owner refuses, he just lets it burn to the ground. He literally built a real estate empire on disaster capitalism. But here's the crucial lesson. What happens when the political system that props up your immense fortune suddenly disappears? In the 1930s, Mir Osman Ali Khan, the Nizam of Hyderabad in India, was the richest man on the planet. He was so ridiculously wealthy, he used the 185-carat Jacob diamond, one of the largest in the world, as a simple paperweight. His personal treasury was worth more than the entire Bank of England. But his wealth was tied to his sovereign rule over his state. So in 1948, when the newly independent India absorbed his kingdom, his power, and the source of his unimaginable wealth, just evaporated. Almost overnight. So all of these stories, from Mansa Musa to the Nizam of Hyderabad, they raise a really uncomfortable question, don't they? You learned about kings and presidents and generals in school. But why didn't you learn about the people who were often really in charge, the ones who owned them, financed them, or controlled the systems they operated in? Because here it is. Here's the connecting thread between every single person we've talked about. At this scale, wealth isn't about what you can buy. It's not about luxury cars or mansions. It's about controlling the very structure of society. It's about controlling the economy, the laws, and sometimes the leaders themselves. How did they get so rich? But I'm going to suggest to you that maybe, just maybe, that's the wrong question. The much more interesting and frankly more important question is about power. What does owning 91% of a nation's energy supply let you do? What does owning the Holy Roman Emperor let you do? When you stop focusing on the accumulation and start focusing on the application of that wealth, the story gets a whole lot more unsettling. Because the systems that allowed for this kind of incredible concentration of power, monopolies, sovereign control, the power of debt, they haven't gone away. They've just changed their clothes. And looking back at these titans of historical wealth, these richest people in history, it forces us to ask a very direct and very uncomfortable question. Who holds that kind of structural control right now? And what are they doing with it?